I ended up overexerting myself, and the floor fell out from underneath me, and I ended up being bedbound for a few months, and then, kind of rested my way, I guess, out of being that to housebound. And then finally, you know, I found the Facebook forums and things like that. I've been riding my stationary bike, and then I just bought a new bike for my birthday at the end of April, and I have been loving it. I was really, really sort of anxious to even try it out, but I was like, you know what? Whatever happens, happens. It's going to be okay. I know what to do, and that, whether this is good or bad for me, it's all going to be good in the end. Every time I come back in the house, I'm just like laughing at myself, like I did it, this, I'm doing it, and I'm riding my bike, and it just feels so amazing.
How's it going, Thrivers? Miguel here with CFS Recovery. In this video, we have Michelle, who has been on quite the journey for the last few years, but now she's out there thriving. She's got her life back, and she's worked her way back to where she is now, where she can do all these things. But it wasn't like that not too long ago, right? So she contracted COVID back in 2021, which pretty much triggered this whole downward spiral. There were earlier signs of a hypersensitive nervous system, which I'm sure a lot of you guys can relate to. But without further ado, I just want to introduce you guys to Michelle. Michelle, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
So, Michelle, maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from.
All right. My name's Michelle. I'm from a small town in Alberta, Canada, just sort of about 40 minutes south of Edmonton. That's the big city. Yeah. Live here with my husband and my 3 cats.
Yes, a fellow Canadian. I'm not
Yeah.
too far from you in the grand scheme of things. I'm just one province over in British
Yeah.
Columbia. But let's jump right into it. How did all of this start? We know you had COVID, but what was that like? Did it hit you instantly? And when did that hit you?
So contracting COVID, obviously there was a lot of fear around that. And I'll just kind of do a step back.
Hmm.
I work in a health industry, so as a massage therapist, and so we were closed down a few times, you know, just because of the general proximity to people or whatever. And so there were a lot of times when we were working, there was a lot of, that's all anybody wanted to talk about. There was a lot of fear surrounding it. And so when I got sick, I was definitely, afraid that, obviously I didn't want to go to the hospital or have any, life-saving measures or anything like that. So I definitely felt a lot of fear around getting sick. And so when I got sick, it just sort of seemed like a sinus infection. And I was doing great. I thought, oh, this is going to be awesome. I'll be back to work in 2 weeks, blah, blah, blah. And then I ended up overexerting myself, and the floor fell out from underneath me, and I ended up being bedbound for a few months, and then, kind of rested my way, I guess, out of being that to housebound. And then finally, I found the Facebook forums and things like that. And it was actually in a Facebook forum that I don't recommend anybody going into, but somebody who had found some brain retraining program posted in there, this is how I got better. And, I was very, very skeptical. I actually had sort of not an argument, but, I had a lot of questions about, her claims and everything. And so from then on, I thought, well, if she got better, then definitely I'm going to get better, because I can't stay like this. I don't want to stay like this. So that was really the spark that kind of started my journey to find brain retraining. I'd never heard of it before. And so I did a lot of research and found that there were some programs and et cetera, et cetera.
Hmm. Got it. So let's go back a little bit because, you say you were bedridden for a few months, and I feel like we kind of just breezed through that. That probably felt like a few years. So,
It did.
actually, even leading up to COVID, what were some of the signs that you felt like you had a hypersensitive nervous system? Now, usually when this hits us, right before we go on this downward spiral, we're usually having these different stressors in life, or we're already kind of on the edge from our hypersensitive nervous system. We don't know it at the time, but looking back, we can start to see early signs. So, what were some of the signs you were seeing leading up to you contracting COVID?
So I remember um, being at work and just feeling so like kind of like in despair, like, and it was like I didn't have a reason to feel in despair. It was just like this overwhelming feeling of, I don't know, fear, anxiety, despair, just all mixed in. And it was just so bizarre. Like, I don't know, I shouldn't have been feeling that way, or at least that's what I was telling myself. And so
Hmm.
I was on edge, definitely feeling very anxious. I've been sort of an anxious person most of my life, but it was definitely more heightened for sure. Like, it was another level for sure. And just at the time, being that it was COVID, just sort of, you couldn't go anywhere without a mask, and stay away from this person that, all these people at the supermarket, or, the hardware store, or, just things like that. It was just ridiculous. We did church from home via Zoom, and, so just, all these things. And it just sort of lended itself to becoming more hypersensitive to things already. I was already hypersensitive to smells and sounds, and this was all previous to COVID. I obviously didn't know all about being hypersensitive. So there was a lot of issues that I had that I now see were, just the root was having a hypersensitive nervous system. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I noticed that for myself too. And almost everybody I talked to, there were early signs. But the thing is, like, I was still functional. I was able to work, I was able to go
Yeah.
out, exercise. So I didn't really take it too seriously because I was still functional. It's only when I kind of hit that wall and I had to really stop everything that I was doing, well, the symptoms actually got even more intense. So that's when I started to go, hmm, something is really wrong here. And it
Yeah.
doesn't seem like this stuff is going away. So after you contracted COVID, you end up overdoing it a little bit. What was the thing that kind of pushed you over the edge to fall even deeper into this thing?
Yeah, it's a funny thing. I just decided to vacuum the floor because it hadn't been done for a couple weeks, and it was bothering me. And yeah,
Yeah.
I after I put the vacuum away, I sat down on the couch and I was like, "Whoa! Like, I need to go lay down because I'm gonna melt away into nothing, into the air." It
Yeah.
was bizarre.
Wow.
And for a long time, I had sort of like PTSD over vacuuming. It took me a while before I could vacuum again.
Yeah. I guess it was just too much, too stimulating because I guess it's noisy. I mean, it's some physical activity, but
Yeah.
that's the thing that really made things go even more downhill, right? And you were bedridden after that for a few
Yeah.
months?
Yeah.
Wow. So, what were some of the symptoms you were feeling? I'm sure there were so many, but what were some of the things that really were the most difficult to deal with? Just so people can see that they're not the only ones dealing with this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, fatigue was definitely a big one for me. I like probably about 15 or 18 years ago, I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. So I had a lot of body pain, which I could exercise through. And as long as I could exercise, it was managed pretty well.
Mhm.
But after, the vacuuming event, just like I have no just words to describe the depth of pain. Like, it was just aching, like almost feeling like bruises all over your body kind of thing. And my arms and legs were like so heavy, like there were sandbags tied to them. Like, I couldn't lift. I couldn't hardly, well, I could walk, but it was, so slow, just like dragging myself. And that was just a tremendous effort just to do
Mhm.
that. I had heart palpitations, like that buzzing, crawling sort of skin kind of thing, migraines. I had a cough for the longest time, cough, and sore throat. Well, after being done with COVID,
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah, tightness
Yeah,
in the chest, just
it's a
everything
lot.
you can imagine. Yeah.
It was like a whole package of symptoms, and
Hmm.
so you had a lot of pain, even to begin with, like 18 years with mild fibromyalgia, but this took it to a whole different level. Would you say
Yeah.
that was your biggest issue was the pain, or it was a mix of that and the fatigue and some other things?
Yeah, I'd have to say that fatigue was the biggest thing, and then the pain for sure.
Got
Yeah.
it. Got it. So when all of this hits you, obviously it's a big change of lifestyle because all of a sudden you're not able to do all these simple things like even vacuuming,
Yeah,
right? To the average person, that's just a regular thing you don't even think about, but
right.
that kind of wiped you out. So what was going through your mind at the time, when you're bedridden and, you're trying to figure out what's going on? What's going through your mind?
Yeah, I mean, too many negative things, like, of course, it's new. Nobody knew what long COVID was at the time. Um, and, so there was limited information for sure. So then, you know, you think you're dying or, I don't know, just so many wild scenarios that your brain could come up with. It's just, yeah,
Mhm.
crazy
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, and for me, a big thing was like a loss of identity,
Yeah.
who I was. Did you go through that as well during that phase?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I love my job as a massage therapist and I love helping people feel better. And, I couldn't lift my arms, I couldn't walk, like how can I do the job that I love feeling
Mhm.
this way? And so like and of course I couldn't drive either. So like what can I do? I can't contribute. I couldn't make meals, I couldn't wash dishes, I couldn't, basically I could sit in the chair or I could lie in my bed. So, it was just everything gets taken from you and you just feel such a loss of who you are as a person and it's not just like it was gradual, it was like immediate. So,
Yeah,
I think it would have been easier to take if it was gradual.
for
But
sure, for
yeah.
sure. There's little to no transition time, right? One day you're doing all these things, you can go out and exercise and work a job, and vacuum, right? And then 3 weeks later, it's a struggle to even get up and walk around within the house. So it's just such a drastic change. I think that's w one of the biggest hurdles in all of this. The physical stuff, it's pretty hard, but also the mental side of things. For me, that was even harder because I feel like I'm pretty tough. I can deal with pain, I can deal with some symptoms, but losing who I was and not having that outlet to go exercise when I'm stressed, like, that was probably the
Yeah.
most difficult thing. So, during this time, obviously, you're trying to figure out what's going on. So, what kinda treatments did you try, or what were the doctors saying when you were going to them? Did you go to all
Yeah.
these specialists?
So I went to my family doctor and he's like, yeah, it's you just have to rest, like just go home and rest. And that was probably about the 3-month mark after being sick. I went to see him because I wasn't getting better.
Mhm.
He's like, yeah, you need to rest, but you also need to exercise. Don't forget to exercise because you can't just like, do nothing. And so then I tried that for a while, which was not helpful because, you know, each of those things in and of themselves was not a help to, I guess, the degree that I was trying to do them because, you don't know. And so
Mhm.
then by that time, there was kind of information coming out about, long COVID and kind of things, what to do. And um, one doctor that I had, well, this was on YouTube actually. There was a lot of YouTube stuff, suggested pacing. And so I didn't know what that was. And the suggestion was to have a smartwatch or something like that where you could track your heart rate and you just need to stay under 100 beats per minute kind of thing. And so I was like, oh yeah, I better track that. and so then I got into a place where I was kind of tracking everything, because my sleep was disrupted. So my sleep, my heart rate, how was I breathing, my oxygen saturation, all that stuff. um, and of course, that wasn't helpful. I mean, to a point. But then as you learn more stuff, right? And you get on the Facebook forums and there was, oh,
Mm.
these supplements and like literally people were taking like hundreds of things. And I was like, wow, like how can all of this together, like seriously, there's got to be some sort of not good stuff here that crosses over, like just, I don't
Yeah.
know. So, I did do supplements and things. I went to a naturopath for the IVs, these vitamin C IVs and all that stuff, and nothing really helped, obviously. Yeah, and then probably it wasn't long after that that I found that person on one of those Facebook forums that said, "You just have to change your mind. You need to brain train." So, yeah,
Mhm.
that led me down a bit of a rabbit hole as well, investigating what brain training was and how can I
Yeah.
just change my mind and get better.
Mhm. Yeah. What was your initial reaction to people talking about brain retraining? I know for me, because I had come across from it before, and I saw these almost miracle stories where someone was like bedridden, then they did some mental exercise, and then they're walking in 3 weeks. Like those are the drastic stories, but I was thinking there's no way that this is true. Like what
Yeah,
I have is way more than whatever this is because this is very physical. I can't just think my way out of it. So
right.
it kind of made me mad when I saw that stuff. But what was it like for you?
100% I was angry. And
Mhm.
I not that I had an argument with this gal on Facebook, but we exchanged some um, paragraphs about whatever. And she actually documented herself on she did a video diary or whatever. And so basically what she did um, was she decided that she wanted to ride her bike and she did some thinking about it, probably some visualization, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, I'm going for it. She hopped on her bike and she gave it her all. And she said she had a rough weekend after that. And then things changed and she was able to do more stuff. And I thought, that doesn't sound like something I could do. Like I can barely kind of like, walk down the hall or go, I can't spend very long at the grocery store. I can only go there to get one thing. I can't even walk around the grocery store. So it didn't really like I was mad that she, I had the same thing as you kind of thing. And, this is what I did to get better. But,
Mhm.
as we talked more and, I came around to it, I was like, okay, well, you know, I want my story to be your story is what I said to her. And from then on, my mindset, my brain kind of changed. Like I want that for myself. And so then I began to search for brain training programs and whatnot. How can I do this? And I'm a real DIYer, and so I wanted to like, find the book, or I wanted to find, you know, I don't know, a free program, something that I could do on my own, because I'm just that kind of person.
Mhm.
Like to
Yeah.
do on my own.
I'm the same way. I'll usually try to figure it out on my own first. And then when I hit any roadblocks or there's like this law of diminishing returns where I'm putting in all this effort, but I'm not getting as many results. I'm like, all right, it's time to bring someone in here to help me implement this stuff. But I'm always like, the first option is to just try to do it myself because
Yeah.
you can learn almost everything on YouTube nowadays.
Right.
Whether you
Yeah.
wanna fix a door or a faucet or fix a car, it's on YouTube, so I'm like, "Why would I pay for something? I'll just do it myself because the answers are there," right?
Yeah.
So, about how long into your journey did you start trying this brain retraining stuff?
I think it was the next year, 2022. So like a whole year had gone by. And I think that's when I interviewed with you, was summer of 2022, something like that.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I really wanted to go into your program, but I just didn't have the funds. And so then I thought, well, okay, I'll try a different one. And so I tried a different one, and it was okay. Like there was definitely things that I learned there, but it just was like, I don't know. And it could have been just because I was not in a great space for learning. Like I couldn't watch TV videos, be on my phone, like nothing like that. And so the whole program was video learning. And so it just was, I had so much headaches and brain
Mm.
fog, and it was just terrible. Anyways, and so I spent about, I think it's a 3-month program. And so, or you can do the program and then you can add on some coaching. And so I added on a group coaching for 3 months, and it was okay, but you could only ask one question every like 3 weeks or something like that. Cause
Holy cow.
or you
That's
need to take a turn or something. I don't know. It was really like, and you know, as you go on in your recovery, you have questions and you need to ask them like tomorrow, right?
yeah, or today or in the next couple hours actually sometimes.
Exactly. And so it was, I found that very frustrating. And so, anyways, I made a promise to myself that if you ever opened another program that was more sustainable for me, that I would jump on it for sure. And in that time, in between that time, so that was January of 2023 that I finished the other program. And so in between that and joining the academy, I did a meditation program that Raylan Eagle actually really, she took the course and I can't even think of the right word. I still have a little bit of brain fog.
Okay.
Anyway, she suggested it and I took the course and it was amazing. It really kind of brought me out of a little bit of that hypersensitivity again. And so I just kind of leveled up after taking that. And then you opened your course in, well, I think it was July, but I didn't join till September.
Mhm. Yeah,
So
we
we were
launched
going
the
away for,
academy,
yeah.
uh we launched the academy, I think it was we made the announcement in July, opened it up in August as a beta test, and then really opened it up in September, and
Okay.
yeah. So, up to that point, before you even got started with the academy, you had been following me for quite a while, right? Like a
Yeah.
year and a bit?
Yeah.
Got it. And you had tried other things, and I think in the beginning, we try all the medical treatments. We try the supplements, the naturopaths, and then it's interesting because people like yourself and myself, we're so against brain retraining in the beginning until we have no other option to try it because we try all these other things. I
Yeah.
tried the IVs as well, just like you did, and the supplements and even medications, but I just wasn't getting better. In fact, I was getting worse
Hmm.
because there's all these side effects that come with the medications. And I remember my dad telling me when I was bedridden and he was blending food for me, he was blending rice and tilapia for me to drink for my meals. I was telling him, "No, I need these supplements to keep me afloat, even just to sustain where I'm at." And he said, healthy people don't take supplements or medications. They just eat food and they're healthy. So if your goal is to become healthy, eventually you won't you don't wanna be on any of this stuff." And then
Right.
it clicked. I was like, "You're right. The supplements aren't the answer to getting there. They might help, right? But they're not the answer." And for me,
Yeah.
I just kept getting worse. So I think, like, I heard about brain retraining before, but then my doctor in the hospital, when I was at rock bottom and I had nowhere else to turn to, he brought it up again. He actually didn't even specifically say brain retraining. He said, "This is neuroplasticity. Your brain is actually causing these symptoms." So I was at a place where I was open to it. And then that's
Yeah.
when I dove deep. Did you find that was similar for you where you were very closed off to it, but
Yeah.
eventually you almost had nowhere else to turn to, so you just had to do it?
Yeah. Well, like I said, I had spent probably, well, about a year in these Facebook forums,
Yeah.
and you know, how can I keep going on like this? Like it's, there's got to be something, better than that. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, this is kind of like CFS,
Mhm.
but how can, is long COVID like CFS? It kind of feels maybe it could be the same. Not that I, well, not that I knew that I had experienced CFS, but just from hearing other people or whatever. And so then I started to not just research long COVID, but look for CFS if there was, any programs for CFS. And of course, there was quite a few that came up for that. But yeah, it just, once you open your mind to possibilities, then everything changes. Like I became excited. Like there's something that I can physically do. I don't just have to sit here and wait, like my doctor told me. I can be a participant. I can, advocate for myself. I can do things that I can do to be just like these people who've recovered.
Mhm. Absolutely, right, and I think it was relieving knowing that there was an actual path to follow, that my doctor laid
Yeah.
it out for me, and that's what I laid out for you guys in the YouTube channel and, in any of our resources. So, it's just nice knowing that people have walked this path before. because when you're in the depths of it, you feel like you're the only one experiencing this. And
Yeah.
sure, you hear about these other stories, but there's no one experiencing your unique situation. So you have all these questions of how do I get out of this? But once you figure out there are actual frameworks to follow, there's an actual, path to follow, it just makes things so much easier. Not saying that it's easy, it's still difficult, but it's a
Mhm.
heck of a lot easier than kind of trying to do this all by yourself and figuring it out all on your own. So you came into the academy, it was last September, which is September 2023,
Yep.
right? What was your level of activity and where would you say you were at in your recovery journey? Like, were you semi functional? Were you still mainly housebound? What was your level at?
Yeah, so I was mostly semi-functional. Like I could drive to Edmonton, do a little bit of shopping, and come home. I could drive home, do all those things by myself. But that was the only thing. If I was going to do something, that was the only thing I could do that day. Like I would have to come home and rest. That was the activity for the day. It was a bigger activity, but it was still like the activity. I couldn't do anything else.
Mm,
Um, yeah, I mean, just before I joined the academy, my husband and I, he's from Canada, from Ontario, and we had just come back from a trip there. We were there for 2 weeks. And so, I was able to fly and to, visit and do all the things there. Um, I was still tired, but,
mhm.
semi functional.
Yeah. And were you still feeling some symptoms?
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you just don't understand why they come on because it just seems like it's random, right? And before we went on that trip, I was doing really well. I hadn't had headaches for a while, but of course, was expanding my activity and ended up getting terrible, terrible headaches
Mm,
just from going, you know, flying, being in the airport, visiting with family. You
yeah.
know, even though we kept it pretty chill, it was still just different stuff that I hadn't been doing,
Yeah.
previous to. So
I
yeah.
see. I see. So you were still being a bit careful about your activity levels, not overdoing it. You were still kind of pacing yourself at that time because you were
Hmm.
still experiencing some flare-ups,
Yeah.
right? So you joined in September and today is May 2024. You recently, we call it, graduated from the academy along with some other folks who joined at your time, which is super cool. It's almost like this, it's like a graduation parade of a handful of people saying, "Hey, I'm ready to spread my wings and get out into the world again."
Yeah.
Um, what were some of the biggest things that helped you? What were some of the biggest mind shifts you had? I know there's so many because we've been on so many calls within the academy, but what would you say the top 2 or 3 things are that really help you kind of skyrocket your progress, right? Because you were making decent progress, but sounds like you were hitting a bit of a plateau or you weren't seeing, these jumps that you were looking for. So, what were some of the things that made it get to the next level?
I'd have to say one of the things that Junior said recently was probably a couple months ago, but he said that everything that you do, whether you perceive it as a good thing or a bad thing, always in the end turns out to be a good thing because you can learn from it. And so if you expand your activity and it feels like it's, too much symptoms, your symptoms came up way too fast, way too much, more than you had intended in the first place when you were doing your expansion, all just comes around again to being good for you because now you can really learn how to respond well and just really put it to the test and see what putting all those things together that you've learned. And that really, like, made me stop and think, like, yeah, because before I would perceive it as, oh, I did too much, like, why did I do that? I shouldn't have done that. um you know Anyways, it doesn't matter, the thought process. In the end, it just matters how I respond. And that was just like, I don't want to say it's magic, but, and I know like from day one, it's like, it's all about responding well. That's the golden rule. And sometimes you can get it on different levels. And of course you have to respond well. But then when it hits the fan, and you're tested, it's depends on where you're at in your recovery. You can respond well for a shorter amount of time. And then as time goes on, you get better and better at responding well because you're showing your body that you're listening and that, it can trust you to make good decisions. And, so there's that trust between your brain and yourself. Yeah. Just like everything coming around, and no matter if it was good or bad, it just comes around to being a good thing for you.
Mhm. So reframing a lot of our perceptions of things, because I think especially around flare-ups, in the beginning, we'll see them as negative things. We'll try to avoid them as much as possible. And maybe we'll be okay with most of them, but let's say we go out to do some activity and now we have a more intense flare up. Well, all of a sudden now we're saying, oh, I screwed up, starting to regret the thing we did. I shouldn't have done that. We start beating ourselves up and make the situation 10 times worse by
Right.
pouring fuel on the fire. So I think just understanding that these adjustment periods, they're on the way. All these perceived challenges, they're on the way. They're not roadblocks that are stopping you from getting there.
Yeah.
Actually, our perception of those challenges is what's stopping us from getting there. But once you start seeing it as an opportunity to work on your nervous system, to recalibrate it, to do the brain retraining, I think that's when things really, really shift for people. So I know another big thing, and you've been very involved in the academy community, sharing posts, sharing answers to questions, sharing wins and things like that. How helpful was it being close to other people on a similar journey as you? Like, how much did a group setting and a group environment and group calls play into, helping you implement a lot of this stuff?
I love this question because, like I said earlier, I'm a DIYer. And when I initially joined Academy, I was going to get in, I was going to learn everything that I could, and I was going to get out. And I didn't need other people. I could do it myself. But when I joined the Academy, and first of all, it was a small group when I joined. And so that was amazing. That was good for me. I needed a smaller group. And, because you become like a family. And those first few people, we were all kind of at the academy at the beginning, and like you said, a few of us have just left. And oh, you tend to lean on each other, and you become invested in their journeys and their wins. And yeah, I wouldn't take it back. Sorry. um it was pretty integral. It was pretty integral for me, just being able to share, number one, and people, know how big a win is if you can just wash your hair that day, or um, walk up and down the block, or just the milestones that really don't seem like they're a big
Mhm.
deal to others, but to the community, everybody knows that these things are huge, and they cheer you on and they congratulate you, and just really share in your happiness. And it's priceless.
Mhm. And the way I describe it to people who, don't really understand what it's like being in that kind of environment, it feels like you're part of a small team versus doing this by yourself. And when you're on this journey with other people and you're invested into their journeys and they're invested into your journeys and everybody's pulling each other forward, it's just so much easier to stick to the plan and continue that momentum, because there are going to be some weeks where I'm sure you've experienced it, where you're in an AP or a flare up and then you're struggling, physically, but maybe even emotionally, and you're getting a bit shaky, but then you're seeing other people and they're having amazing wins and they're encouraging you and saying, "Hey, next week you're going to be out of this flare up. It's
Yeah.
fine. This is part of it." And then there are going to be weeks where you're feeling great or much better, and then those same people are in flare-ups, and then now you're pulling them forward. So everybody is just like pulling each other forward, and it's super cool to see, people who came in with you also progress. So it's like you're all getting better together, right? 6 months ago, you guys were all really struggling, right? Or running into these roadblocks, running into these challenges, these flare-ups, and your level of functioning, your guys' wins were like, "Hey, I was able to go do this thing," or "I was able to go to the mall or go to dinner with family and have no symptoms." Now it's like, "Hey, my win is I'm about to go to Vegas and I'm about to travel." I haven't done that in like 10 years or 20 years. So
Yeah.
the wins, they like compound on each other, and I think that's so crucial for recovery. It's being fed positivity and hope and inspiration. And some people can do that on their own, right? For me, it was just my doctor who was reminding me of these things. And I talked to him every 3 months maybe after I got out of the hospital. So I was able to tell myself these things and just replay his voice. But when you're in a bigger group and there's a shared vision and a shared mission and you're going through it with them, I think it's so powerful. It makes it very hard to not make progress
Yeah.
because you're being pulled forward,
Yeah.
right?
I mean,
So
I had a really good support group. My family, my um, close friends, like everybody was very supportive, but they just don't understand. And I think that's where the community comes in. Just
yeah,
being that much more for you.
yeah. Now, we talked about some of the biggest things that helped you, but sometimes people also learn from their biggest mistakes, you know? So, for people who are watching this right now, maybe they're in the trenches or they're where you were a couple years ago, just so we can help them avoid making the same mistakes we've made. What were some of the biggest mistakes you made in recovery, if you had to say? And I know there's probably a lot. What's something that really stands out that if they avoided this thing, it would really, really help their recovery journeys?
I mean, I don't feel like it's like big things. I feel like it's just small things. And um, number one is belief. And just, you know, I know there's days, I still have days when I'm like, oh, really, like, again, still, but I'm like, no, this is just temporary. And so, keeping that belief that you're gonna make it out. You're gonna make it out. I look at Krista and Adrienne and Junior and I think they did it and I can do it too. And it's such an inspiration. But you have to keep that in the forefront, especially when things aren't going uh, you know, sunshine and roses. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
belief is number one. And then trust. Trust that you're in the right place, you're doing all the right things. And like even in the community at school where people are like, um, I don't know if it's working. I don't know, should I do something else? Blah, blah, blah. And I would always say, you know what you're doing today is for tomorrow. It's not going to show up right away. It's, all these things, they're little things and they just accumulate. And pretty soon you've got a good accumulation and you know what? You're no longer back there. You're here. And you don't know that you're here until you can look back and see there. So
Mhm.
it's just, believe that you're going to get there and then just trust that all these little things are adding up.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think those 2, belief and trust, they're so intertwined, and those are the biggest things. I was just talking about it earlier, like a couple hours ago, because we have internal calls with our team just to see new things we can implement. How can we get people to thriving health faster? And one of the things we talked about today was it doesn't really come down to effort we're talking about recovery because this isn't something you could just will your way through. With this thing, it's almost like uh, it's ironic how the more you do, the worse you will get if you try to just stack on these things physically. So it's not so much the effort, but it's the belief. You can have very high belief and you'll get results from that even with low effort, right? Now, we can say that, okay, it takes a lot of effort to believe in something, but in terms of actually doing things physically, you can do way less than what you're doing now, but have very strong belief, and that will actually get you more results than the physical things. So it doesn't really come down to effort, it comes down to belief. And if you get that thing right, then everything starts to change because this is a mind body illness. This is a brain that is sending false signals to the body. So we have to work on the brain, not so much what we're doing physically, right?
Yeah.
So, what other things might you have done in the past that hindered your recovery? I know for me, probably one of the biggest mistakes I made was Googling my symptoms, right? And it seems like such a simple thing, but it never, ever, not once, ever worked out well. I always felt worse after I Googled symptoms. Now, the intention was good. I was
Yeah.
looking for, obviously I want to get better. I was looking for solutions, but I didn't find a whole lot of solutions when it came to CFS. So that's one of my biggest mistakes. But any other things that you did that you think hindered your growth?
So I think one of the biggest things for me was pacing, and I I got really really good at just kind of staying under that radar and not um, expanding my activity enough because symptoms are they feel scary, right?
Mhm.
And so I became a really good pacer at just flying under the radar. And I had a sign on my wall for the longest time: do less than you think you can, which it was always a good reminder because inevitably sometimes you just do more than because you're feeling good that day, right?
Mhm.
And you just do more than you usually do, which is more often than not a big jump to the nervous system, and it just wasn't ready for that. And so I think um, just not being an expert at that, and letting yourself be challenged, but in smaller increments, was the best way to go for me. I paced way too good.
Mhm. As in, like, that was one of the big hurdles? It was pacing too much, too closely?
Yeah, that kept me plateaued for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. You're playing it too safe, right?
Yeah,
And especially for people who track things like steps, tracking heart rate, trying to keep it under a certain threshold, but pacing too closely, that is like a survival instinct
yeah,
because that's rooted in fear. You're trying to avoid any kind of
yeah,
symptoms, really, right? And if we're afraid of the symptoms, then they will hit you a lot harder and these flare ups will last longer, right? So for you, what would you say is different now than a year ago? Let's say when did you join the academy? It was about 8 or 9 months ago. What would you say is different now than 8 or 9 months ago? And I'm sure there's so many things. So maybe let's start physically. What is different now physically?
okay, so physically, I mean, I was starting to go for walks back in September. We went to the mountains, my husband and I, in April, and had a lovely, lovely time. We did lots of not big hikes, but some smaller hikes that were relatively flat, little elevation change or whatever. And before I would be like, "Oh, I'm going, we're doing this and I'm doing it," and this time I was just like, you know what, I'm going to take my time, and I'm going to look around. These are lovely trees. There's a little waterfalls over here. There's water running, and there's bridges that cross the water all over the place. And so we just really took our time, and I actually enjoyed the hike, the walk, whatever you want to call it. um I one of my I made a vision board uh probably a couple of years ago, way before I started any program. And I have biking, picture of people on bikes up there because I really wanted to ride my bike. I just before I got sick, I bought a new bike, and I have never been able to ride it.
Mm-hmm.
And so then, probably 2 months ago, Krista challenged me to just get back on my stationary bike, and I did. I did it, and I've been riding my stationary bike, and then I just bought a new bike for my birthday at the end of April. I bought
I
an
saw
e-bike.
that. I saw
Yeah,
that in the Wings channel.
yeah, and I have been loving it. I was really, really sort of anxious to even try it out, but I was like, you know what? Whatever happens, happens. It's going to be okay. I know what to do, and that whether this is good or bad for me, it's all going to be good in the end. So just really, my mindset is a lot stronger, and that in itself has made me more resilient. Um, I've had my bike out for a few rides around the block, and I was originally just going to go once, but yesterday I took it out and I was like, you know what? I'm going twice. And I
Mhm.
I went around twice, and it was just so exhilarating. Every time I come back in the house, I'm just like laughing at myself, like I did it. I'm doing it, and I'm riding my bike, and it just feels so amazing. I just,
Mhm.
who knew that going for a bike ride would be so amazing? But I
Yeah.
just feel like I'm doing it. I'm on it. Like I can do it. And I thought I would wake up with my legs feeling a little sore this morning, but no, they've decided that riding a bike is okay now. So
Mhm.
yeah.
So, lots of physical improvements, going
Hmm.
hiking, riding that bike again. So, I think that also ties into, what I wanna talk about next, which is what has changed for you mentally and emotionally. But I think something you just said there, it's so true. Just riding a bike feels so good. When you go from living life down here, very limited, very capped in your freedom, right? You're able to appreciate even the simple things, like going for a bike ride, like just walking around on a hike. You're able to be more present there and enjoy the
Yeah.
streams versus trying to race through it. So, you know, being able to appreciate the small things, being grateful for the simple things in life, I feel like that was a huge shift for me because I was the kind of person who just raced through life before, just try to sprint through really without ever taking time to stop and smell the roses. So, what are some of the differences for you mentally and emotionally now? And how have you taken some of the recovery principles or the things you've learned on this journey and applied it to life?
uh, I figured out early on, and again, I got this um, from Krista, about giving gratitude. And it's something that I had done all my life, really, is give gratitude at the end of the day for the things that I've been able to do, and you know uh, see whatever. And I kind of lost that when I got sick. And you know of course, a lot of things kind of fall by the wayside because you know your mind is you know cloudy and you can't think. And anyways, and so giving gratitude, I said once on a call that it was my secret power, because it transforms. It can transform any incident. If you've got a rain cloud hovering over you, you give gratitude, and even for things that you might not be super grateful for, it can just change things around in a minute. Just a quick story on that. I My son was is training for Edmonton Police Service, and they had a family night, and I went and did the night and everything. But when I drove there, it was daylight, and I had a person sitting in the seat next to me giving me directions. And so when I left, they weren't there. They weren't giving on the outskirts of the city. There was no street lamps or anything, and so I didn't even know where I was. And I tried to turn my nav on, and it was, I think, a part of the navigation that wasn't mapped on it. And so it kept taking me to places that were not near the city at all. And I was lost. And I felt so, down. Here I am in the middle of nowhere. My phone was like, I think, at 12%, so I was just feeling, all the panic, all the emotions and everything. And I pulled over to the side of the road and I said, you know what? If I can get to this city, I know how to get home. And so found the highway. I drove more north than I needed to go, but I got to the city, and then I found my way home. And so this whole instance could have brought me crashing down. I was starting to feel symptoms and everything, and when I finally got to the place where I knew I just started giving gratitude. And I was grateful to have been with my son. I was grateful that I was doing this all on my own. I drove there, I drove back, I did all these things, and I found my way home. And in the midst of that, everything changed. The symptoms went away, and I just felt more happiness, more gratitude. It's more uplifting feelings. It was just amazing. And
Mhm.
I can't say enough about giving gratitude. It can change things in an instant.
Mhm. So life threw a curveball essentially, but you
Yeah,
responded very well to the
yeah,
situation. Could have been a downward spiral. You could have freaked out,
yeah,
look at your phone and said, "Oh, man, how the heck am I gonna get home?" But you got out of that emotional state, out of the amygdala, which is, that's what causes all of these symptoms, and you're able to look at it logically and figure out a solution. So, that's awesome. That's a perfect example of applying all these things that got you out of this illness into a real life situation. And that's the cool thing is a lot of these principles, they're like life principles, responding well to not just symptoms, but to curveballs and unexpected things in life and being able to adapt to situations. I think when you come out of this, you come back into the world more adaptable to different things and more resilient to stress
yeah,
because that's the only way to get out of this whole mess,
yeah.
you know? So for people watching this right now and, they're watching this and they're seeing a lot of your story in their stories and they're thinking, man, I wish I was you, Michelle. I wish I could just be where you're at right now. Like, what do I need to do to get there? What's some advice you can give them? Or what's a golden nugget you can give them? Or any kind of hope or inspirational words
Oh
that you
gosh.
want to share with somebody sitting on the other side of the screen?
Just know that if you feel lost and you don't know where to go, just you're not alone. It might feel like you're alone, like there's nobody else out there experiencing what you're experiencing, but that's not true. You are not alone. And if you take a chance on this program, you will not be disappointed. Um, I took a chance, and it was the best thing that I did for myself. I'm sure that I would still be making progress, but it would have been much slower progress. And I learned so much about how to navigate from here on out. Like I still would have been that old Michelle had I made it out on my own. And I don't know what worked, time, and I don't know, a little bit of this and a dash of that. I wouldn't have known, you know, about responding well. I wouldn't have known
Mhm,
about staying neutral, um, emotionally while you're recovering. And there's so many things that I wouldn't have known that I'm applying every single day. Initially when I thought about being recovered, it was like I'm never going to experience those things again. I'm going to be, I won't have to listen to my brain say all these, negative or silly things because I'll be recovered. It's not that way. It's learning how to navigate that and to think through things logically and not always respond emotionally. And I think that's
mhm,
been the biggest thing for myself is that, I've always been an emotional person. And that's not a bad thing, but it's just learning how to navigate that and to see what is actual, needing emotion and what, can be logicked out. So yeah,
mhm. Yeah, absolutely. It's about you running your emotions and running your life, not letting the emotions run your life and run
yeah,
you. You learn to take back control and you learn to get back in the driver's seat. So you are in control of your thoughts and also how you feel mentally and physically.
yep,
Because if emotions are running the show, it's pretty unpredictable. Any outside factor can just at the drop of a hat change your experience of what you're feeling that day. And you don't want that. That's not empowering. So, it's it's quite the journey for you to go on, and it's so cool seeing you come out the other side of this thing and being able to share your story. And I just want to let you know I appreciate your time and going deep into some of your experiences, but also most of all sharing some golden nuggets on here with these people who are going to be where you're at, in the very near future. And yeah, this is going to change some lives. So you keep on going, you keep on getting closer to thriving health. And I think what you said is so true. Recovery, it's not this destination where everything is perfect. There's still life to live, but that's
Yeah.
what makes life interesting. You wouldn't want a perfect life because then it's all just the same boring stuff. You want challenges, you want things to cause you to grow, because without challenge there is no growth. So for you guys going through this phase, this chapter in your life right now, this is the ultimate growth period where you learn so much about yourself, but also you're forced to level up who you are because that's the only way out of this,
Yeah.
right? So if you guys are watching this right now and you resonated with some of Michelle's story, comment down below what was your biggest takeaway from this, from all the golden nuggets she shared. What was your biggest takeaway? And also, if you did want some extra help on your journey, we have a lot of different solutions for you. I'll leave a link down below. We have the Recovery Academy, which is where Michelle was. And as she said, it helped change your life. So if you did need some extra help, more than just some YouTube videos and doing this all on your own, that's what the program is there for. So I'll leave a link down below. But always remember, guys, you are a thriver and you are just one mind shift away from living life with thriving health. So, Michelle, you made it to thriving health, and it's going to get more and more optimized. Now we can. It's always nice being able to say, or not having to say, Michelle, let's get you from surviving to thriving, because you're no longer surviving. You're out here thriving.
I
So, and
am.
that's the goal for each and every one of you. So, thank you so much, Michelle. I appreciate your
Thank you
time.
for having me.
Absolutely.
I'd say that CFS recovery is absolutely the real deal.
I actually felt like somebody had answered, like somebody explained